Welcome to Andy Staples On3. Big newsy day today. We found out why one of LSU's best players is not playing against Florida State. And it's wild because it's something we thought would never keep someone from playing in a game again. But Maason Smith, defensive tackle for LSU, is going to miss the Florida State game. Why? Because he participated in an autograph signing session for money. I know what you're saying. That's legal now. That's within the NCAA rules. But apparently, he and Kayshon Boutte were involved in one of these autograph sessions before NIL launched in July 2021. And so I guess they were caught doing this because something went sideways with the person they were doing it with. It was very similar to the Todd Gurley, Georgia situation, if you remember that one. And they got turned in. Kayshon Boutte served his suspension last year in the Tigers' 38-0 victory against New Mexico. But because Maason Smith got injured on the fifth play of the Florida State game in the season opener last year, he couldn't serve a suspension. So the NCAA was like, no, you still got to serve it, dude. So he is now serving a suspension more than 2 years after the thing he did was declared completely within the rules. I want to meet the NCAA hardo who decided this had to happen, that one of the best players in the country had to miss a game that we all want to watch because he did something that isn't actually against the rules anymore. It's like the last prohibition agent who grabbed the last bottle of hooch before alcohol was legal again. What is wrong with these people? They have I say it every time. The NCAA needs a vice president of common sense. This is the person who would go, guys, you know this will make you look like giant a-holes. Don't do it. And somebody goes, no, he broke the rules. And you say, no, it's not against the rules anymore. Choose not to look like giant a-holes. Make that choice. You have a choice here, and it's a pretty easy one. Choose it. No one would have known or cared. Not a single person would have known or cared. But no, the people at the NCAA cannot help themselves. They have to do this. They have to grasp on to whatever they have left of the control. Remember, the NCAA did two things for 100 years. Staged events, postseason tournaments in various sports. And it does a great job of that. Still does. And they kept athletes from getting money. That was the other part of the job. Keep athletes from getting money. I know what you're saying. No, they were making rules for competitive equity. Yeah, but they all involved keeping athletes from getting money. There were a couple, coaches couldn't send people to spy on other teams' practices. That's a fairly reasonable rule. But for the most part, the rules were keep athletes from getting money. So you've got all these people whose jobs for years were to keep athletes from getting money. And all of a sudden they're told, we can't let you keep athletes from getting money anymore. And they're probably like, oh, man, but we went to law school so we could keep athletes from getting money. What are we going to do now? Well, at least one person in the office was like, I got this one case. I got this one. These two LSU players, they were signing autographs. It wasn't July 1st yet. I got them. Congratulations. You got them. And now we don't get to watch Maason Smith play against Florida State. What a victory for all of us. Thank you to NCAA. Great job. You've done it again. That's okay. Moving on. There is more news. This clip crossed on Wednesday, and it was after we'd already gotten the show all locked and loaded. And I really laughed when I saw it and did not expect it to produce the kind of just discussion that it did, because it's really, I mean, it seems like common sense. It doesn't seem like anything that anyone would be surprised by or upset by, but man, it made some people upset. And I'm not entirely sure why, because what about it surprised you? What didn't you expect? Brett Yormark was talking to the Red Raider Club luncheon on Wednesday. He's the Big 12 commissioner. He's the guy that came in, helped solidify the conference, get it a better TV deal. Why was the conference in need of solidification? Oh, yeah, because Texas and Oklahoma left and left everybody for dead. That happened. So here's what Yormark said at the Red Raider Club luncheon.
In addition, candidly, we were able to get Texas and Oklahoma out a year early. That was a big deal for us, and I think all of you, okay? And Coach, I'm not going to put any pressure on you, but I'm going to be in Austin for Thanksgiving, okay? And you better take care of business like you did right here in Lubbock last year.
That is Brett Yormark telling Joey McGuire, the Red Raiders football coach, hey, go beat Texas in the season finale. Now, some people took this to mean that the conference commissioner is saying rig the games against Texas. And I would assume, by extension, rig the games against Oklahoma. I'm not taking that from him. First of all, it's bad for business to rig games. It's not, people don't want to watch if they think the games are rigged. I don't think that's what's going on here. I think he works for the schools that will be in the Big 12 going forward. So that would be the 8 schools that were, remember, left for dead by Texas and Oklahoma. And then all the other ones that have joined and will join. He doesn't work for Texas and Oklahoma. They're not voting members anymore. Greg Sankey works for them now. He's the SEC commissioner. So what he says should matter to them, but what Brett Yormark says really doesn't matter. And guess what it would be smart for Brett Yormark to do? Curry favor with the schools that control whether he keeps or doesn't keep his job. So wouldn't it be smart if you're Brett Yormark to get on the good side of all the Texas Tech people and the Oklahoma State people and the Iowa State people and the Kansas State people? Because remember, when Texas and Oklahoma left for the SEC in 2021, and they said, oh, we'll leave as soon as the contract's over, then they negotiated a deal to get them out by 2024. When they left, the Big 12 was quite destabilized. If you were Iowa State, if you were Kansas State, you were very worried about your future. And let's be real about this. If the Pac-12 were more competently managed, it would have pillaged the best of what was left of the Big 12 and solidified itself. Instead, Bob Bowlesby, who was then the commissioner of the Big 12, moved very quickly to get 4 more schools. Those are the ones joining this season: BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF. And then Yormark, when he replaced Bob Bowlesby, started trying to expand some more. So the Texas fans and Oklahoma fans going, well, you turned around and raided other conferences. Yes, they had to, because you left them, because they were vulnerable, because you left. Do I think that the Big 12 is going to rig games? I do not. Do I think that anybody's going to order the officials to screw Texas and Oklahoma in calls? I don't. Do I think they're going to laugh their asses off if it's a TCU Baylor or a Kansas State Texas Tech Big 12 championship game? Oh, I absolutely do. Now, here's what you can do if you're Texas and Oklahoma, and you really want to stick it in their eye on the way out to the SEC, because they are going to be salty in every game you play. They're going to be very salty. You beat them all. Play for the Big 12 title. Lock all of them out of the Big 12 title game. You're supposed to be better than them anyway. So that shouldn't be a big problem. You know, Texas especially, This is the most talented team Texas has had in years. Texas will be favored in all of its games against those teams and probably against Oklahoma as well. So this is what happens. You left them. You did the thing that was best for you, and that's fine. But they're allowed to feel however they want to feel about it. And if they want to make fun of you for the entirety of this season, they're going to. And you can suck it up and beat them. If you would like to silence them, just beat them. You have better players, according to the recruiting rankings. So that should be no problem. As Blake points out in the comments, Bowlesby went to George Kliavkoff, the Pac-12 commissioner, after OU and Texas left and asked for a merger. George Kliavkoff said no. Yes, they would not have merged probably, though. They probably, if they had taken some, they would have taken what they wanted and left the rest. And that could have left some schools in the position that that Oregon State and Washington State find themselves in now. And that's just no good. So I laugh at the reaction to this because it's not like any of this should be shocking. This is exactly how they should feel. 100% how they should feel. They should hate you. And that's okay. It is okay if they hate you. Just beat them, and you don't have to worry about them yelling at you. But if you can't beat them, you're going to have to deal with a lot of mocking and a lot of celebrating. Because they were put in a very vulnerable position by you guys. It's only fair. So they're not going to rig the games, but they are going to make fun of you. So just suck it up. One more thing before we get to a big interview with Stanford Steve Coughlin, the new College GameDay gambling analyst. You know him, you love him, from the Scott Van Pelt edition of SportsCenter. One more big news story. Jim Harbaugh, who is sitting out the first 3 games of university-mandated suspension, has announced who will be the interim coach. Except it'll be the interim coaches. Multiple coaches. Defensive coordinator Jesse Mentor will be the interim coach in the season opener against East Carolina. Against UNLV, Jay Harbaugh will get the first half as interim coach. Mike Hart will get the second half. And then against Bowling Green, Sharon Moore, the guy we all think ultimately could be Jim Harbaugh's successor, the offensive coordinator and offensive line coach, he will be the interim coach against the Falcons. So there you have it. Jim Harbaugh doing essentially the same thing he did with quarterbacks last year. Remember, he started Cade McNamara in game 1, J.J. McCarthy in game 2, and said, we'll see who plays better. Probably all the while knowing it was going to be J.J. McCarthy, that was the way you say, well, we gave everybody a chance, and then gracefully allow J.J. to ascend past Cade McNamara, who'd been the starting quarterback on a Big Ten title team. Now he's doing it with the interim coaches. I do enjoy that Harbaugh seems to be having fun with his NCAA suspension for Cheeseburger Gate. This does seem to be he probably enjoyed cooking that up. But be curious to see how it goes. I don't know that it's going to affect the Wolverines in any of those games. They're going to be obscenely more talented than their 3 first opponents, and they should win those games pretty handily. And that brings Harbaugh back in time for the Rutgers game, Big Ten opener. We will see what happens, but I do enjoy that Harbaugh seems to be enjoying all of this. Now, something I know you will enjoy. Stanford Steve, I've known him for years. He is one of the best college football analysts out there, kind of a guy behind the guy. And fortunately, Scott Van Pelt recognized that and put the man in front of the camera so everybody could see how amazing he was and how much he knows. Played tight end at Stanford, was a big-time recruit coming out of Connecticut back in the day. It was pre-star system, but he would have been a 5-star. And just one of the best minds covering college football. And he's deep in it right now, getting ready for his first full-time year on College GameDay. Ladies and gentlemen, Stanford Steve. Joined now by a very special guest, Stanford Steve Coughlin. You know him, you love him from the Scott Van Pelt edition of SportsCenter, but now he is the newest member of the College GameDay crew. He's also got to go to all the Monday Night Football games with the Van Pelt show, so the man is never going to sleep this fall. What's up?
How are you, man? Good to see you. You were one of the first people that reached out when the news came out. It's been a work in progress. Obviously, all the unfortunate moves that, Disney, ESPN has made, but it's part of the business, right? And, you and I have been on this. God, I was thinking about that. It had to be, 2010?
So here's how we met.
2009?
Yeah, here's
Penn
how we
State
met. It was Alabama. Yeah, it was Penn State, Alabama. So, yeah, it would have been 2010, I think, is when they played in Tuscaloosa.
Yep.
And I was a big fan of the Van Pelt and Russillo radio show.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always jog around the campus, when I was there the day before a game. And I knew that you guys were set up in the quad at Alabama. So I just jogged by and I'm like, hey, I work for Sports Illustrated. I listen to you guys all the time. Just want to say, hey. And you're like, Andy, what's up? And I was like, oh, wow, you guys know who I am. Holy crap.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because Ryan and I, actually, that's the trip we went to see Cam Newton's first game in Starkville, I believe, that Thursday night.
Oh, yeah. I was there with Pete Thamel. We ate at Petty's Barbecue. I ate pig face right before that game.
So, I mean, it's just crazy, man. When you think about the time that goes by and we're around the same age and, know all the same games and places. And no, it's awesome. Seeing what you've done is absolutely incredible. And I can't keep up with you, man. Every morning, I mean, we're on different schedules, obviously, but I'm waking up to your videos and stuff. So I appreciate what you're doing. And let's get this season started, man. Like I can't take any more of the nonsense.
Has it not felt like the talking season has gone longer this year than ever? And I know we say that every year, but so Media Day started a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
There will be a game Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God.
No doubt. And like I get it. You guys, and when I say you guys, it's all, everybody at any college football entity. And I'm on vacation and I'm like just scouring dinner. I'm like, can we talk some depth charts? Can we talk, QB battles? Can we find out some O-line depth? And I get it. It's all the alignment stuff. And then I got to a point where I'm listening to some radio shows and they're asking callers, what do you want to hear, alignment or talking season?
Yeah.
And I'm like, please, let's talk some stuff on the field. So yes, it's good to be here. I get what everybody has to do and covering their butts and with different editors and different companies and what interests people and what, people want traction on. I get it. But the games are here. Let's talk games. Let's talk personnel. Let's talk big picture. This season has so much to on the cusp of what we could have with teams that haven't been in the mix for so long. Quarterback battles at top-notch schools. Coaches handling quarterback situations differently.
Yep.
I just love it. And the best thing is we got some flavor out west, which feels great because we're going to have an unbelievable season in the Pac-12, and then poof, it's going to be gone. But that's fine. We're concentrating on the now.
We will talk about your alma mater and its situation later.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk football. And we do have games this weekend. Notre Dame takes the field in Dublin against Navy. Sam Hartman, his debut as Notre Dame starting quarterback. Mm-hmm. I'm excited to see this because, I loved watching Sam play at Wake Forest. He's going to be behind a better line than he's ever played behind. I don't know if his receivers will be equal to or as good, but the backs will be good. So what do you see from Notre Dame, early on?
We did a little thing on the show last night, and Scott asked me what I was most looking forward to. And obviously, I get it. The defending Heisman Trophy winner is out there playing in the Coliseum. And yes, I do have the app, so I will be watching on the Pac-12 network. But the biggest thing is seeing Sam Hartman, Andy, in the Notre Dame uniform, not doing the slow mesh or walk the dog offense, like him under center, him in the shotgun with a pro-style offense. I mean, this is a guy, you've talked about him. Everybody loves the kid. He's the all-time ACC touchdown pass leader. I was looking it up. He averaged over 300 yards passing the last 2 years. Notre Dame has had two guys in the history of the program, and I get it. Notre Dame has been, an option team for the majority of their existence. But Jimmy Clausen and Brady Quinn were the only guys to average throwing for over 300 yards a game in a season. He's done it the last two seasons. And Brady Quinn's the all-time leader in touchdown passes in a season. I believe it's 37, and Hartman's thrown 38 last year and 39 the year before. So what I'm excited for, and I said it last night, I'm not a Notre Dame fan. I never have been. I never will be. But my two favorite things ever of Notre Dame are gone, and that's Michael Mayer and it's Tommy Rees. I absolutely love those two guys, but they're on, going their own routes. But what I would say is I would be optimistic if I'm a Notre Dame fan because you've had lackluster quarterback play, and I love Ian Book, great college quarterback. There were some insufficiencies, when they got to have to play Bama or Clemson again in that playoff atmosphere. Sam Hartman is a guy who has pro potential that is going to be better in those situations. He's going to give you a better opportunity because now with the game changing, you have to score when you get to the postseason. And Sam Hartman's going to give you that chance. And you mentioned the wide receivers. I still think Wake Forest did a darn good job of getting, playmakers around him. But it's Notre Dame. They're still going to have guys.
Right.
So I'm super fired up. The one thing I will be wary of is in this week one matchup, if he does, I see them throwing the ball down the field. They're going to have size and speed advantage on the perimeter, as you do. And Navy knows this. They're up against it every week. Don't overreact to what we see in the Notre Dame pass game because of the advantages. Good teams are going to take advantage and get the ball to their best players. I could see Notre Dame having a big day throwing the ball with Sam Hartman, but what's it going to look like when Ohio State comes to town against a formidable secondary? But again, I want to be optimistic for Notre Dame fans because Sam Hartman is the real deal, and he brings that stuff to the table.
Well, and Navy will also suck possessions out of the game with the way they play on offense. So unless Notre Dame's defense is just stoning them 3 and out every time, which I think they gained 5.5 yards of play on the ground against Notre Dame's defense last year. So I don't know if that'll happen, but yeah, they might not have that many opportunities to throw it.
No, it's a fascinating game too because of the new clock deals. Like if Navy gets the lead, they like to play minimal possession games. How much does that affect? That's where I think you're going to see the difference is in the ball control teams when they're getting first downs and now they get another 45 to run it off and they'll take it all the way down. I will say I was at the Notre Dame-Navy game in Baltimore last year, and Navy in the second half got back. They were down multiple scores.
Yeah, they were down bad. Yeah.
And all they did was blitz the bag out of Pine. So I don't think you're going to be able to do that against Sam Hartman, knowing the advantages I just talked about on the outside. So Newberry was the DC. Now he's the head coach. Navy's going to play a different quarterback than they had. Arline, I don't think, is going to win that job. So it's a lot going into it. And Navy's fired up with what they have. End of the year strong after a rough start. We know what happened with the coaching change, but it's in their blood, right? They're not afraid of anybody. So it'll be fun. I'm just wondering about the surface. I played in the old natural surface in South Bend. And that's the worst surface I ever played on. This, I'm guessing, will be up there in that category of being a bad surface.
I don't know what Irish grass looks like. I
know the speed guys will be changing cleats pregame if they haven't already gotten to practice on that surface. I will guarantee you that.
I do know the credit card machine stopped working when Nebraska played Northwestern last year, and they just gave away the beer, which the Notre Dame fans will. If that happens, the Notre Dame fans will finish off the beer in 3.4 seconds.
Yep, that's a fact.
Those guys, I did a Notre Dame club golf tournament over the year, and man, they get after it. Everybody thinks these Notre Dame people are hoity-toity, like rich people. They get down.
No, they're there. They're at the game for multiple reasons.
Yes,
Let's just say
that. So, are there any other week 0 games that really intrigue you? I mean, Caleb Williams will be playing, but I like UMass, New Mexico State, Don Brown against Jerry Gill.
Hey, UMass better be careful and not being looking ahead to that trip to the Plains next week. They got to go to Las Cruces first.
That's right. Jerry Gill took them to a bowl game last year.
I know. It's got a tattoo off of that thing. I do want to see Vanderbilt. I'm not talking about
Yep.
the stadium. I'm talking about what's on the field. I
Yeah.
know they're happy, and Clark built that thing from the bottom up, and it's in that conference. It's about building a formidable roster. You know what you're getting into every week in that conference. And what do they look like? Are they, Swan looks like he's going to be the quarterback. They talk about the speed and talent they have on the perimeter. And what the hell does Hawaii look like? Timmy Chang was in a horrible situation last year, and you saw that. But they were in games at the end of the year, having to go to those, Mountain West teams and play in bad weather. They were in a bunch of games late in the year. And then I would think Maction going out west is very interesting. San Diego State was a totally different team when they made the move at quarterback and made Lindley the play caller. So San Diego State's got some chances to play some Pac-12 teams after this and make a mark. So it's just a little forecasting. Good, the biggest thing, and I think every game has interest in week 0 and week 1 because you want to see these guys in a new uniform for the first time. And it's always like Hank Bachmeier is going to be playing for La Tech. Like that guy made his name in a week 1 win a couple years ago in Tallahassee. So
Florida State, with Boise State,
there's plenty to see. And I just can't wait. Like I said, we're on the field. Let's talk about what's happening on the field.
So who is the person you're most excited to see in a different, like, I want to see JT Daniels playing for Rice.
Yep.
Because this is 4th different team. I'm very interested in Peyton Thorne at Auburn. I think that situation is fascinating. I saw Keon Coleman up close and personal at Florida State practice this week. Wow.
Yeah.
That's all I can say about that. So
he's a dude. I think it's Graham Mertz. I really do, because you still talk to what happened in Wisconsin. I get he's still, held against his recruiting ranking in that first game against Illinois, but there's still a reason Billy Napier went and got him. And I get it. There was other guys out there, but seeing what they're about and where their roster is and what's looking forward and how promising it looks, but knowing what Billy Napier has done in prior stops, I'm kind of confident in Florida. Now, the schedule is an absolute bear.
Yeah.
We get it. But if you could, like, I look at Florida, right? Like, if you could go out to Utah and compete and get that game close, like, you got something to build on. Whereas I look at a team like Colorado, like, all this stuff they've built up all season. If they go to Fort Worth and get their doors blown in, like, where you got to pick it up and you got to be ready for as hungry a team as there is in the Big Ten with a coaching staff with Matt Rule, that that team's going to be buttoned up. So where is the mentality of these teams with all these new faces and new places after a week 1 game when you finally can figure out? We had Lincoln Riley on the show with Scott last night, and he just talked about, we don't get preseason games. We don't get inter-squad scrimmages with other teams. You practice with what you got, and then you go out and just throw it against the wall, and then you got some tape to evaluate. Like, that's it's almost like a preseason game, but it's not. It's for real.
Yeah.
So
you lose it. It is one that people talk about for years,
and it gets held over your head for the whole season. So and we've had some monster week matchups, in the weeks after that. So I would put Graham Mertz on there because I just want to see it. I know what Billy wants to do in running the football, which is kind of what they want to do at Wisconsin, but they felt that the Wisconsin defense wasn't good. And where's the Florida defense? You need a good defense in this sport to travel because you have to play well on the road. And that's where defense is travel.
Yeah, the confidence that you get from the Florida folks is because they feel like their defense is better than it's been in a while, that they're a little deeper on the D-line. They got a transfer from Memphis named Cam Jackson at D-tackle, and a guy named Caleb Banks from Louisville, who they feel like can come in. And it's weird because you're like, oh, but they had Gervon Dexter, and how did they not do it? But apparently the guys around Dexter were so young, and now they feel more confident. So that's where the confidence from Florida is coming from. I think 5.5 as a total is too low. I don't think they're going to win the SEC East, but I can see them winning 6 or 7.
Yeah, I think, like I said, you got to get out of Salt Lake healthy with a decent mindset and showing.
I think they can win that outright if Rising doesn't play, Steve.
No doubt. Big if, but yeah, they have. I would think they have the personnel to go there. and do that. But I think as long as you have a good feeling about yourself out of that game, and everybody obviously wants a win, and that's what we judge everybody on. But where we'll really see it is in that early visit from Tennessee. That's where I think, because I still was impressed with what they did in Knoxville. A couple, breaks here, then Tennessee blows the door open with a couple long balls. I was impressed with their plan early on, and they were in that game. And then it kind of was what they were. They didn't have that roster where you needed guys in the second half, or you needed guys in the first half to rotate so your good guys are fresh in the second half. That's where I think you'll see an improvement, and also that crowd. Like that, you talk about people that, you're there, they're starving to be able to make a difference. And that's where I think is a difference in anywhere in the country when you see these SEC teams that have had success, but now they know they could be a difference. They could be an uplifter for their team because they're going to need them when a rival comes in and the rival's ranked higher than you. That's what's awesome. And that's why I can't wait to see the Swamp on that Saturday when Knoxville comes to town. So that's my gauge point. You ever get that one, you got to feel great about your over 5.5.
What other season totals did you see that just jumped out at you? Like, this is either way too low or way too high.
I looked hard at the teams coming into the Big 12, Andy. I go back, and I've talked to a bunch of people. You've talked to a bunch of people, and you think it's never like, I'm here in Maryland, and it still doesn't feel right. They're mad that people try and make Rutgers their rival, and they don't even want to be put in that. When you look at the landscape and how many Big Ten championships Maryland's won across the sports compared to Rutgers. Anyway, I go back and I think about the two teams that have had success moving up. It's TCU and it's Utah. But you go back and look at those first years when they moved up, they got waxed. Absolutely waxed. And that's why I look at Houston. I love Coach Holgerson. He's probably my favorite coach in the sport to go have a beer with or have a meal in any circumstance. And he'll admit he's not as buttoned up, or his teams aren't as buttoned up, and he, prioritizes different things. I don't think that roster's ready for this gauntlet that they have to go through this year.
They got that rated in the portal too.
Yeah, and I get it. I love Donovan. He brought in at QB. He hasn't really played a full season. Tank Dell is an absolute stud. I expect him to make, big plays on Sundays for the Texans. So a brutal start. They should have lost in San Antonio last year to the Roadrunners. They get them in week 1. That's a losable game. There's so many losable games. And when, I talk about roster and depth and all that, I don't think Houston's there. I grabbed the 5 when it first came out because I said, no way. I still think they don't win over. I think it's 4.5 now. I look at Houston. Another team, I look at the high ones and look at the possible losses. Ohio State. There's a bunch of losable games there. Now, everybody wants to talk about the wide receiver room. I get it. They're absolutely outstanding. The move from Hartline, making the play calls now on offense, and Ryan Day, delegating that to him. That's a factor. I don't worry about the quarterback in a Ryan Day offense because it's so friendly and there's so many things built in for them. But I do worry about the offensive line. And when I think about that offensive line, you got a road trip at South Bend. That's going to be it'll probably be a Ohio State home game, but there still is going to be adversity facing that game. That's a losable game. A road trip to Madison. That's a losable game. Penn State, as you talk to them, they're feeling as good about themselves.
Penn State plays Ohio State tough no matter where. Like, Penn State can't beat Michigan in Ann Arbor, but can beat them in State College. Against Ohio State, they always lose, but they always scare them.
Yep. And then you got the game at Ann Arbor for Ohio State. So there's a 10.5 out there. I don't think Ohio State goes 11-1. I don't. I think they lose multiple games. Who they are to, I don't know. But that's a shot I would take on a high win total. People are asking for the Cinderella and all that, and with teams changing, UCF was that darling, and it was Tulane last year. I think SMU has a really, really good shot of making a big, big splash this year. When you talk about what he's done in the portal, and Rhett, I feel has always done a good job of getting the ball in his best players' hands. Had 2 great receivers the last 2 years. Absolutely force-fed those guys. Had a lot of success. I just feel like they have more. I love the quarterback and the opportunity they have to go to Norman and play TCU. I really like that team. I think they win the American. I like that over 8. USC, depending on the number, 10 I see there, I would go under there. I'm still not sold on the depth of the defense. I know they got guys, but again, losable games. They're going to start. They're going to be undefeated going to South Bend. That's a losable game. They get Washington at home, losable game. Go to Oregon, losable. Utah, losable. UCLA, losable. So I think that's a tough road, especially when the total now 9.5. I could maybe get there, but 10, I think that's a difference there. I'm in on the Florida State Kool-Aid. If they can't do it this year, I don't know when. They have everything you want. I talk about fake momentum. That's what I call it. It's when a team has their quarterback back, their coach back, they won their bowl game. They got everything going in the right direction, right? Florida State has that maybe more than anybody in the country. When you talk about what they got, you mentioned Keon Coleman, absolute difference maker. I think he's going to be their best receiver. You get a chance to make a mark against LSU in week 1.
And you got Maason Smith.
Yeah. You got an early road trip to Clemson. No divisions. So I look at Florida State over 9.5. I like that. And then 2 other middle tier numbers. It's a wild card. I'll take the candy with Brennan Armstrong and an eye at NC State and over 6.5. I love what I saw.
That feels so low to me. Like every Dave Doran team, even when they disappoint, wins 8 games.
Correct. And this is one of those years where it's the hype's not crazy. That's when I like Dave Doran. He's sound in whatever he does. The defense is going to be well. That's why they're always in games on the road. I like that mix there of NC State over 6.5. And the other team, the problem is the matchup and the best team in their division, Kentucky. I really like what they've done. I think Devin Leary brings a whole different dynamic in a sense of game control and game experience compared to what they had with Will Levis. I get Will Levis had the wow factor, but when you talk about what Mark Stoops wants to do, he wants to win games playing real good, sound physical defense. What complements that? A good run game. It sounds like they got their offensive line solidified. Liam Cohen comes back. That's the best offense I feel like I've seen since Hal Mummy was in Lexington. So I love Devin Leary going there. I absolutely love their wide receivers. And I just felt like they couldn't
Brown.
So I look at Kentucky over 7 as an over I like as far as we're talking those kind of numbers.
That one is going to be fun because I think there's a cluster in the SEC East where we really don't know what's going to happen. And, we think Tennessee is going to be better than that group. We don't know that.
Correct.
Kentucky could wind up being that second best team behind Georgia. Florida could be better. South Carolina, if you look at the end of last season, could be better. So like I'm pumped about Nick Harbor. We've talked about him a bunch on the show. And I know this is what I love about you and Scott, because you guys are you're doing a national show that covers every single sport, but you are still recruitniks like the rest of us over here. And so you're putting that stuff on sports that are like Nick Harbor, by the way, from your backyard there in DC. Like, I cannot wait to see what this guy, because maybe he's a freshman. He doesn't know what's going on, but I'm also looking at 6'5", 240. Throw him in a bubble screen and see if he breaks a tackle.
Andy, it's real. The kid is real. And being a kid that had physical advantages in high school and taking advantage of this is a whole different level with Nick Harbor. But you also have the factor of being in the SEC and all the bright lights on you week 1 against North Carolina in a have-to-win game for South Carolina when you look at the beginning of their schedule and knowing the momentum they've created. So, yeah, it sounds like Juice Wells is ahead of schedule for South Carolina. But, yeah, I think it's a simple question of who do you pick to come in second in the SEC East. And I would go Kentucky. I get it. Tennessee has built everything. I need to see more from Joe Milton. I get it. He's as likable a dude as there is, has the wow factor, if any. That offense has the wow factor. But I still think when it came down to it, they made their success when Hendon Hooker had to run the ball. And I don't think Milton's that kind of runner. And it's another year of tape on that offense that teams have. And I get, Thornton reading everything from there. He's been an absolute difference maker, the kid from Oregon for them. Squirrel will be that guy also, too. I imagine him more in the slot. But it's going to be hard for Tennessee to get back to where they were last year. And then you mount the expectations.
Right.
That's a tough ask. So I here's the thing, what it comes down. I like Kentucky's matchup against everybody in that division except Georgia, because they kind of play the same deal.
Right.
And
And
I don't
Georgia
think
plays
you
it
can
much
Georgia
better.
out Georgia. That's
exactly. All right. You got the new gig at Game Day.
Mm-hmm.
So how often are you asked, okay, where are you going this week? Where are you going? We know you're going to South Carolina, North Carolina, in Charlotte, week 1. Week 2, it's got to be Tuscaloosa, right?
I would think so. In this day and age, we talked about the portal, man. Like, you mentioned JT Daniels. I'll tell you right now, we're not going to Tuscaloosa if Rice beats Texas. That's a guarantee. But I would think with that, especially being an ESPN game, I would think before the games get played, that's one of the 5 games we have on the docket. So I think, just from a selfish standpoint, I don't know, talking to people and looking at things and watching that game last year back, I don't know, and I hate saying this because it's week 2, I don't know if I'm more fired up for a game this year than that game. Because when you talk to people with both in and around the programs, there's a confidence that sometimes you don't get. And the side with Texas is so many guys on that staff have coached in the SEC, and they knew they had a chance last year against Bama, knowing that they were coming to their place, knowing the familiarity they had maybe with that roster. But they had to be perfect, and they weren't. Quarterback gets hurt, so many penalties, and you have Bryce Young on the other side. There's a sense that I feel that they feel like they have what they need to go on the road in an SEC environment and get a win, which says a lot. Teams will say they're confident in themselves. I actually feel it this year with Texas. That's what's different to me. Knowing the struggles they've had, the numbers everybody wants to throw. I don't think that I see they haven't been picked to win the conference since 2009.
Yeah.
Is that right?
It's right. And
wow.
I don't know that they've had this level of talent since 2009. They haven't had this many NFL offensive linemen and NFL guys in the secondary. And that's where I feel like they're different than in past years. Now, I still want to see them win the winnable games in the Big 12, but I don't have any doubt that they'll be up for Alabama, which is why I think that game's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you talk about physicality. Like, that's why I'm so excited. I'm picking Bama to win the SEC because I feel like they have that Saban mantra back. Their defense, the defense, like the secondary is going to be better. There's no doubt in my mind there. When you talk about the front 7, talk about the weight loss with Otis. Everybody wants to talk about that kid. Guys on the staff, have told me Booker, the guard, is their favorite player on the team, who's a kid that I am absolutely in the tank for. He grew up in New Haven, which is right down the street where I grew up from. Like, I've had my eyes on that kid since he was 10 years old. And I'm so happy for him where he's come from and this opportunity he has and knowing what the player he's become. But Bama getting back to that run game, like that's where I'm really excited. And I feel like could take the onus off whoever the quarterback is.
Yeah.
Knowing that those guys have their different strengths. So when you look at that and what Bama, go back and watch that. Texas, the defensive line of Texas gave it to Bama last year in that game. Bama could not do anything offensively, and Bryce, pulled one out like he always does. So that's what I'm excited about is the physicality that's going to bring to the table. And Texas on offense, like plenty of toys to play with. I'm expecting a step up from JT at tight end for them. He has it in him, but again, that's physicality, and you need that against Bama when you go and play them on the road. But, the Murphy kid and Collins up front for them on the defensive line are absolute monsters. And those are the guys I look at when you go on the road. If they dictate, you're going to have success. So that's why I'm so fired up for that matchup.
So with this game day cast, are you keeping McAfee out of trouble, or is he keeping you out of trouble? How's that going to work?
He's been awesome. Again, like one of the first guys, when Bear had to make the decision, it happened, between, I believe, the championship Saturday and New Year's Day. And I got the invite to go do game day at the Peach Bowl, go do game day at the Rose Bowl, and then be out there for the national championship. And I'll tell you, being up there on the desk, with McAfee punching in the thigh as you're talking, it gets real fast. But he's been great. We've had a great relationship. He's one of one. When you talk about what he brings to the table, the energy aside, that's what I appreciate. Knowing the environments that we're going to be in and week out, and how smart he is. Like he sees stuff that we'll be watching games together, and it's just, and I get it. He wants to see the leg of the punter. I understand that. But even, when the punter's not on the field, he's picking out stuff that I'm not even looking at. So it's a great dynamic to have. I think everybody brings something to the table. I can't wait to mix it up on Dez. I think I'm going to be with him on College Football Live on Fridays from site. So that'll be fun. And, the authority and Thamel trying to break the news, pecking, bothering him to see who made the travel plane.
Who's out? Who didn't show up?
Exactly. So finding the right mix and not stepping on too many toes. That's the fine line that I have, but I'm confident in what I have. And those guys couldn't be more welcoming in the calls that we've had and with, whether it's our meetings on Zoom or, individual calls that guys have reached out. It's been fun. And like I said, I'm absolutely jacked up. Growing up in our age bracket, me playing out West, it was a race down to get breakfast and then get back to the room as soon as possible to lay in bed to watch the beginning of game day. It's been a part of my life since I was playing. And to be there and be on that desk week one in Charlotte is going to be something that's going to be awesome. I cannot wait.
That 7 a.m. game day start when you were playing out West that's pretty early. It was 6 a.m. out West now,
6 a.m.
7 a.m. back then. So I held off as long as I could, but your alma mater is involved in all this realignment stuff and got the shaft. Mm-hmm. Let's be perfectly honest. You played tight end at Stanford, and what was it like watching all of that happen in real time?
Well, it goes back because I've been thinking about this for a while. Knowing the prowess that USC and UCLA and then Oregon and Washington, like that, when you're in that conference, what schools have built. And then like even going back to 2010 and seeing Harbaugh come in and David take over and seeing them on that cusp of playing in BCS bowl games and in Rose Bowls and being that close to the playoff. And then McCaffrey comes in and like, I'm telling my wife, I'm like, I have to go to the Rose Bowl to see Christian McCaffrey. Like this probably is not going to happen again. There's a good chance it's not going to, and it hasn't. And just knowing, like seeing how teams have hit this, hit it while the iron's hot, like a UCF got hot at the right time. And then you see the air coming out of the ball and your program declining and knowing there's not an onus on sports. And then you see the money and going to the SEC schools and seeing the facilities and what they have and doing what they're doing for fans and tailgates and stadium atmospheres and all that. And Stanford just not having a care. And then when you get into the Pac-12 and you see the lack of leadership, and I remember it was Bryce Love's year. Stanford was playing at Arizona State. It was the weekend game day was going at Pullman. And I'm on the sidelines, and Larry Scott asked me, hey, how long has College Game Day done a Friday show from site? And I'm looking at him like, wow, he doesn't realize that College Football Live is from site when game day is. And I'm just like, wow, this is like big. Like that's a problem. And you don't have that, the knowing of it and the knowledge of the landscape. And then you look down, and then Stanford specifically, the president involved in a scandal and the AD not saying anything publicly and knowing like there's been a bunch of stuff with students on campus and, going with the band and taking the fun away. It's been a long time coming in my mind, just seeing it and hoping that it's going to change. And then, like I said, as you see the football program, we know that's the moneymaker for schools. And it's just the worst possible timing's everything. It's been everything for all these. I mean, Utah, TCU, look at when they made the move, how hot they were. So it sucks. It absolutely sucks. And then talking to people in and around, whether it's, people around the board of trustees or the higher ups, and there's a lot when you talk to Stanford alumni that make a hell of a lot more money than I do. And there was always this sense of the Notre Dame partnership. And I couldn't believe, I never believed it. And it was like, oh, when Notre Dame makes the job, I'm like, well, what if Notre Dame doesn't go? Then what? You're going to attach us to Cal? Like that you can't rely on that stuff. And it was just like, oh, we'll be all right. We'll be all right. Well, you're not all right. You're not all right. And there was no plan. And again, from the leadership of the conference to the leadership of the university, when you talk about the onus on sports, it wasn't there. And I get going back to 2020 and COVID in the States having restrictions. But you look at what the SEC was trying to do to get guys on the field and play and get games played for the fans to come back to. There was none of that. And I'm not saying that we're hiding behind that. I get it. There were restrictions, but there was no outgoingness, it felt like. And it caught up to him. It absolutely caught up to him. And it's brutal because I still think, you've been to all of them. Every Pac-12 campus brings something to the table.
Yeah.
And it's different. And Pac-12 teams would always get penalized for going on the road and losing in conference. Whereas in the SEC, it was like, oh, that's a tough place to play. Well, you go to play in Tempe, Arizona, when it's 100 degrees in a 10 o'clock game at night. You tell me how easy that is.
Pullman's not an easy place to play.
And I'll tell you right now, looking at those good teams that have to go to Corvallis this year, good luck. Because that stadium's done again. You talk about a hungry fan base. And it's just, like I said, all I could say is it sucks, man. It really does, because there's been so much good in living it. And to see there was just a lack of a plan is just really sad.
Well, hopefully that they get this figured out. You may be future former ACC star Steve Coughlin. So we'll see how that goes. But I cannot wait to see you on game day every week. I'm so excited for this. It is going to be a blast, and it has been a pleasure today. And of course, I'll just be texting you all the time during games anyway. So just get
like old times, my man. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. Yeah. We're game watchers, and we finally get them this Saturday. Let's just say that.
Thank God. Stanford Steve, thank you so much.
Absolutely, my man.
Yes, we do get games this Saturday, and one of those games is going to be in Dublin. Navy and Notre Dame, and we need to break that sucker down. The Fighting Irish have traveled to Dublin. They are on site. Our man Tyler Horka from blueandgold.com, that's On3's Notre Dame site, he will be taking a red eye tonight to Dublin. But first, he's going to break down this game for us. We welcome Tyler Horka of blueandgold.com talking Notre Dame. Tyler's got a red eye tonight to Dublin. The Fighting Irish took one last night to Dublin. So they, as we speak, are in Ireland, probably about to go to bed now, right, Tyler?
Yeah, I guess it's only 5 hours ahead, but when you factor in that red eye, just working for this game and preparing for it, previewing it, there were some nights this week where I was like, it's 8 o'clock. Can I go to bed already? Just because the days were so long. Yep. So when you factor in a red eye and going to sleep in a different country than you slept the last time you went to bed, I'd say they're about ready to go to bed.
So this will be the first look at a very new Notre Dame team. Sam Hartman takes over at quarterback. Jared Parker takes over as the offensive coordinator. Tommy Rees is at Alabama now. How different an offense should we expect from Notre Dame?
I think it's going to be pretty different, and I think it's just going to be because you're adapting to personnel more so than it's going to be different because you're going from Tommy Rees to Jared Parker. Look, Jared Parker is probably going to incorporate some Tommy Rees elements into his offense. There's a reason that Nick Saban, the greatest coach in college football history, went out and got a guy like Tommy Rees. There's a reason Tommy Rees has been talked about as being a potential NFL offensive coordinator. He has some good concepts, and Jared Parker would be smart to use them, but he would also be smart to say, hey, I have Sam Hartman as my quarterback. I'm going to let this guy do what he does, which is throw the football down the field. And sometimes that means getting the ball out of his hands quickly too, because he's a very accurate passer on slants and such. His completion percentage at Wake Forest probably wouldn't tell you that, but I mean, the slow mesh is a completely different deal. Playing at Wake Forest is a completely different deal than playing at Notre Dame. So I think you see Sam Hartman throw the ball down the field quite a bit, but then you also see some of that ground and pound that made Tommy Rees so popular at Notre Dame when everything was going his way, because you have Audric Estime, a really good running back, and you have 4 other scholarship running backs as his complements that are going to be really good too. And then, of course, you might have the best offensive tackle in the country in Joe Alt and 2 other returning starters on that offensive line. So there's a lot of pieces that Jared Parker can use, and I think that's what you see from this Notre Dame offense this year, is kind of just adapting to personnel and letting these guys do their thing.
So you mentioned Estime. Logan Diggs is at LSU now. He would have been the running mate back there with Estime. Who of the younger guys might that be now?
Yeah, so you got a couple sophomores in Jabron Payne and Jadarian Price. Jabron Payne is the guy who only has 2 carries for 5 yards, but he's number 2 on the Notre Dame depth chart right now. I think it's going to be one of those things where you just kind of feel it out and let these guys see what you have, because you also have a true freshman in Jeremiah Love, who might be, and self-proclaimed, is the fastest running back on this team. He told me when we were interviewing him a couple weeks ago, like, yeah, I am the fastest. And I think Dylan McCullough, Notre Dame's running backs coach, has realized that. And he said, okay, if this guy can provide something that these other running backs can't, as good as they may be at what they do, then yeah, you got to get a guy like that on the field. And then you have kind of the wild card in Penn State transfer Devin Ford, who only has something like 20 carries in the last couple of college football seasons, but he looked really good in camp. Maybe not a guy that is as strong as Audric Estime or is as fast as Jeremiah Love, but definitely a guy that does all of those things, you know, running between the tackles, pass blocking, catching the ball out of the backfield. He does them all at a good to great level, maybe not an elite level. So he's a guy that you kind of have to get on the field and see what you have in him. If you're going to go to the transfer portal and get a Power 5 player like that, you got to at least give him some reps and see what you have. So it's a mixed bag at the running back position. The one constant, the one thing that you know that you have is Audric Estime, and he's going to get the bulk of the carries game in and game out. But as you know, at this level, you need multiple running backs to do your thing. That's why LSU went out and got Logan Diggs from the transfer portal to reunite with Brian Kelly, because they know that that's a really good back. LSU is going to have really good backs every year, but the more the merrier. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think any given day, there could be a different RB2 for Notre Dame, and that speaks to what they have depth-wise in the room, but then also just kind of the nature of college football, where if the guy has the hot hand, you got to let him ride it.
So this game last year was 35-13 at halftime, ended 35-32. You know, and basically at halftime, we're like, we're turning this off. That great Braden Lindsey catch, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then it's one of those you turn back on in the fourth quarter, like, what the hell is happening here?
Yeah.
Navy was grinding it out on the ground. They were lighting up Drew Pine with blitz after blitz after blitz. What did Notre Dame learn from that situation?
Yeah, it was a perfect storm for Navy. I will say that. Michael Mayer whiffed on a block. You don't see that often. I think it was Logan Diggs, speak of the devil, who whiffed on a block. He's a pretty good pass pro guy. Generally, it's just those blitzes really got to Notre Dame. So I think that's what they learned. And Brian Newberry, obviously the defensive coordinator at that time, is now the head coach. So it's not like any of that has gone away. But they did kind of tip their hand even in a loss, like you said, still lost 35-32, where they're not going to catch Notre Dame by surprise with those blitzes, because a lot of that didn't come in the first half, and that's why it was 35-13. The Notre Dame offense was humming along, but then all of a sudden Brian Newberry said, okay, we're going to throw what we have at them and see if they can handle it. Notre Dame could not. So the things that Notre Dame learned, they're going to be ready for that kind of stuff. And even though I think you see less of it from Navy because there isn't that element of surprise anymore, but they also learned that Navy plays hard, and they're going to play till the final whistle blows in that fourth quarter. And there were a lot of people there in Baltimore, Maryland that day who were kind of, wearing the Notre Dame blue and gold and green. And they were like, man, is this really going to happen? Because it did get to that point. I remember sitting there in that stadium saying, geez, Navy is actually really coming back and could quite possibly win this thing at the end. I don't think you see that. So I think you see Notre Dame take Navy seriously for 60 minutes. Not to say that they kind of gave up and gave in, because all credit to Navy for what happened in that second half. But I don't think you see the same script where Notre Dame kind of eases off the gas pedal a little bit and lets Navy back into that thing, and kind of some self-inflicted wounds as well. There was an interception from Drew Pine. I think you tell Sam Hartman, hey, take care of the ball. I know you're going to want to throw for a lot of touchdowns in this game, but just make sure you don't throw any interceptions in the second half, and we should be good.
What have the Notre Dame coaches said about the clock rules, playing against a Navy team that is going to try to take possessions out of this game? I mean, if they get first downs, they're going to drain that play clock, I would imagine.
Yeah, it could be a situation where Notre Dame knows it might only have 1 or 2 possessions in the first quarter, maybe only 3, 4, or 5 in the first half. So what Marcus Freeman said is, like I was just telling you about Sam Hartman, take care of the football. Don't throw those picks that give the ball right back to Navy, because we might not see it again for 10 minutes. I mean, Navy has been known to go on those 10-minute life-sucking drives that are even they make a bigger impact when they end in 6 or 7 points as well. There's a lot of times where Navy will have the ball for 7 or 8 minutes and you just get the ball back anyway. And if you're leading the football game, that doesn't really matter. It just gets you closer to that finish line. But if Navy is staying in the game and finishing those longer drives with touchdowns, then every single Notre Dame possession on offense at that point becomes so much more important. So it's not just a Sam Hartman thing either. Audric Estime had some fumbling issues in the middle of last season. It's don't put the ball on the ground. When it's 3rd and short, you got to make sure you connect on that and move the chains, because 3rd and short, and if you're on your own side of the field or maybe even near the 50 and you're thinking, oh, man, I don't want to go for this and give Navy a short field, because short field for them means 5 or 6 minutes to go 50 yards, where for anybody else, it could be a minute or 2. So it's all about taking care of the ball, finishing drives. 3rd down offense is huge. And 3rd down defense is huge too, because if you can get Navy off the field and limit them to a 2 or 3 minute possession, then, I mean, that's huge in a game like this.
So how much is the schedule piece of this different for Notre Dame in terms of preparing to defend the triple option? Because they've had all offseason. Yeah. You look at the schedule last year, they had just played Clemson. They had Boston College the next week. They had USC 2 weeks later. It feels like there's a little more time to emphasize what you've got to deal with against Navy.
Yeah, Marcus Freeman said this week that it's 100% an advantage to play Navy in the first week of the season. And then the very next day we asked some players and they said the same thing. You got to look at it from a player's perspective, where you're playing all these fundamental teams. I mean, college football is what it is these days. You're preparing for the spread and chunk it down the field, but you got to stay up near the line because the team could gash you. Throwing to set up the run these days is huge in college football. Navy is just a complete crapshoot because it's everything and everything. It's the triple option, especially this year where Navy's saying it's going to throw it a little bit more with the new offensive coordinator, Grant Chestnut from Kennesaw State. So I'm kind of interested to see what Navy looks like. From that point, it's not so much an advantage because this is Navy showing what it has with this new offensive coordinator for the first time. Notre Dame seeing it just like anybody else. But just from a mental standpoint of not having to break up the middle of the season and say 1 week you're facing Caleb Williams and USC, and then the next week you're facing Navy in the triple option. That's a mess for an 18 to 22-year-old to say, okay, how do these two things even make any sense? What are we doing here?
Yeah, Clemson and Navy don't look anything alike, and they played them back-to-back.
Exactly. So now you kind of get the benefit of Marcus Freeman in your ear in March saying, hey, the first guys we play are Navy. So think about it now. Think about it in June. Definitely think about it in August. That hasn't been the case since has it been since 2012 since these two teams played first? I don't know. I know they played.
I don't think they have other than that. I think
that's the last time they played in Ireland too. So this is a breath of fresh air for Notre Dame.
All right. Hit the dive, man. Hit the QB. Hit the pitch, man. And all will be well. Tyler, safe travels to Dublin.
Yeah, I hope I just found out this morning that I have a middle seat, so I've been stewing on that all day, but I might just take a sleeping aid of some sort and just say, I'm gonna crash for 7 hours. I may wake up groggy in Ireland, but as long as I get through that flight, that's all I'm thinking about right now.
This is you're gonna have some pints when you get there, but you might need some pints before you take off, just to relax you for that middle seat experience.
Exactly.
Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah. All right, we'll see you next time.
That is Tyler Horka. I cannot wait. That is a football game that will be on our televisions on Saturday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time on NBC from Dublin. We're getting football. Our long national nightmare is finally over. Oh, I'm so excited. I know everybody else is too. We have not been able to see a game since January. And now it's here. We're done talking. It's time to start playing. The next time I talk to you, football will have been played. Whew, it's so good. But before we go, tonight's extra point, we need to celebrate an anniversary of a cherished moment in college sports history. That's right. 2 years ago today, the Alliance was formed. The Big 12 wasn't invited. They weren't cool enough because remember, Texas and Oklahoma had left, and it was those 8, and they weren't cool enough to be in the Alliance. So it was the Big 10, the Pac-12, and the ACC. And they had a press conference, and it was glorious. And here was my favorite question and answer.
Yeah, hey guys, I'm curious what kind of document has been signed or will be signed to formalize this alliance. How will it be legally enforceable? And will it include any language that prevents one league in this alliance from poaching members of another league?
We'll go ahead and start with Commissioner Kliavkoff for this.
There's no signed contract. There's an agreement among 3 gentlemen, and there is a commitment from 41 presidents and chancellors and 41 athletic directors to do what we say we're going to do. If there's any lack of specificity in the press release, it's because we want to make sure we could deliver 100% of what we promised. So we're aligned in how we want to approach this, but there's no contract, there's no signed document, and there doesn't need to be.
Yes, there does. I think that's what we learned from all this. There absolutely needs to be a signed document. So I am going to draft a document right now, and I will sign it, and I will send it out to you guys digitally, and you can sign it too. And it's going to say, let's all get back together Sunday night and talk about the football that we watched this weekend. Woo! Happy week 0, everybody. We made it. Talk to you Sunday.